Right now, you probably have a lighter somewhere nearby, or a stove you turned on this morning without thinking. And if the power went out tonight, you'd find a candle, strike a match, and feel immediately better. That instinct, reaching for fire when things get dark, is not a habit you learned. It is something far older than that. Because fire didn't just warm ancient humans, it changed what they were. It rewired their brains, restructured their days, reorganized their societies, and eventually made them the most dominant species on the planet. Not the spear, not the axe, not numbers or strategy. Fire. And the strangest part is that for most of human history, no one knew how to make it. Let's go back about 1.5 million years. Your ancestor at this point is a creature called Homo erectus. Upright, bipedal, surprisingly intelligent for the time. But still, by any modern standard, extremely vulnerable. No claws, no thick fur, moderate speed, poor night vision. Surrounded by predators that were faster, stronger, and far better equipped for darkness. The nights were genuinely dangerous. Predators like hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and giant bears were most active after sundown. And early humans had almost nothing to stop them. Except, occasionally, fire. Not fire they made, fire they found. Lightning strikes caused wildfires across the African savanna regularly. And at some point, some group of early humans did something no other animal had ever done. Instead of running from it, they approached it. They picked up a burning branch, and they carried it back to camp. That single act, not the invention of the wheel, not the development of language, may have been the most important decision in the history. Think about what fire gave them immediately. Predators feared it, almost universally. The same lions and hyenas that would casually stalk a group of sleeping humans stopped at the edge of the firelight. Not because fire hurt them. They understood fire from wildfires. They knew it was dangerous and unpredictable. So for the first time, ancient humans had a perimeter, a boundary that said, nothing crosses here. Archaeologist Dennis Sandgatha, who has spent decades studying early human fire use, found evidence at sites in Europe and Africa suggesting that early humans relied on naturally occurring fire for hundreds of thousands of years before they figured out how to produce it themselves. They weren't making fire, they were managing it. Keeping embers alive, carrying coals from one camp to the next, protecting the flame like it was a member of the group. Because in a very real sense, it was. And here's where it gets interesting. Fire changed the night. For the first time in the history of any primate, darkness was no longer a death sentence. Humans could sit, talk, and exist after sundown without being hunted. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the Juhoansi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the few remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, to understand what fire actually did to human social life. What she found was striking. During the day, conversations were almost entirely practical. Who hunts where? What needs to be done? Task-oriented, functional talk. But at night, around the fire, everything changed. 80% of nighttime conversation was storytelling. People shared experiences, described distant places, talked about people who weren't there, created characters, built myths. The firelight extended the social day and turned it into something entirely new. A space where ideas could travel between minds, language, memory, culture, identity. The things that make humans fundamentally different from every other animal may have developed not in the daylight hours of hunting and surviving, but in the long, quiet hours sitting around fire after dark. Then, about 400,000 years ago, something shifted. Archaeological sites from this period in Israel, South Africa, and Europe start showing something new. Hearths, deliberately constructed fire pits, burned bones arranged in patterns. This isn't found fire being managed. This is controlled, intentional fire being built in a specific place for a specific purpose. Humans had figured out how to make it. The most likely method was friction, rubbing two specific types of dry wood together until the heat generated a spark. It sounds simple now. It was not. Finding the right wood, the right technique, and the right conditions required knowledge that had to be developed, tested, and passed down deliberately. It wasn't discovered once. It was invented, forgotten, and reinvented many times across different populations. But once it became reliable, everything accelerated. Because fire didn't just protect humans and extend their nights, it transformed what they could eat. Before cooking, the human diet was brutal. Raw meat had to be chewed for enormous amounts of time. Tough plant fibers were nearly indigestible. Roots were hard, dense, and calorie-poor in their natural state. The human gut had to be large and slow to extract any nutrition at all. Then fire changed the chemistry. Cooking breaks down proteins, it softens fiber, it neutralizes many natural toxins found in plants. It makes calories dramatically more accessible. A cooked sweet potato gives your body nearly twice the usable energy of a raw one. Cooked meat is digested in a fraction of the time. Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham has spent decades arguing that cooking was not just a convenience. It was the biological trigger that made modern humans possible. Because once food became easier to digest, the body didn't need such a massive gut anymore. Energy that was previously spent on digestion got redirected to the brain. The human brain is extraordinarily expensive to run. It consumes about 20% of your body's total energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. No primate with a raw food diet could sustain a brain that size. But cooked food could fuel it. Wrangham's argument, which has become increasingly well supported over the last 2 decades, is that the dramatic expansion of the human brain that distinguishes Homo sapiens from every earlier ancestor was made possible by fire. That the thing sitting in your skull right now, capable of language, mathematics, abstract thought, and reading this sentence, exists in its current form because someone a very long time ago held a burning branch over a piece of meat. And the social consequences kept compounding. Fire created a home base. Before reliable fire, human groups moved constantly and had no reason to return to any specific location. But a fire pit changes that. You build it, you maintain it, you return to it. The hearth became the center of the camp, and the camp became a place you came back to. That permanence changed relationships. It changed child rearing. It created the concept of a shared space. Families organized around fires. Groups developed identities around their hearths. The fire wasn't just a tool. It was a center of gravity. There's evidence from Neanderthal sites suggesting they also used fire. But the pattern was different, less consistent, less socially centralized. Modern humans used fire as a communal anchor in a way that appears to be unique. And some researchers believe this difference in how fire was used, not just whether it was used, may partially explain why modern humans eventually outcompeted every other human species on Earth. By the time you reach the last ice age, roughly 20,000 years ago, fire had become so embedded in human life that survival without it in cold climates was essentially impossible. Humans were living in environments their biology had no business handling. Siberia, Northern Europe, the Arctic fringe, temperatures that would kill an unprotected human in hours. And they were not just surviving there, they were building tools, creating art, and thriving. Because they had fire. They wore animal skins, yes. They built shelters, yes. But the thing that actually made the cold survivable, that kept the children alive through winter, that allowed a human body to exist in places it had no evolutionary right to exist, fire. So here's the full picture. 1.5 million years ago, your ancestor picked up a burning branch and carried it home instead of running away. That decision gave humans a perimeter against predators. Then, it gave them the night. Then, it gave them storytelling, culture, and the foundations of language. Then, it cooked their food and grew their brains. Then, it gave them a home base and organized their social lives. Then, it let them colonize the entire planet, including places that should have killed them. Every weapon, every city, every civilization that came after is downstream of that one act. Not the spear, not the axe, fire. And tonight, when you light a candle or turn on a stove or sit around a fire somewhere and feel inexplicably like everything is going to be fine, that feeling has a reason. It goes back further than you can imagine. You were built for this.